Okay, everyone. A big welcome to you all. A lot of people here today to hear about digital PR, digital public relations. Before we get on to that topic and before I introduce our speaker, just to introduce myself, my name is Charlie Pownall. I'm the chair of the Communications and Marketing Committee here. I think we're also teamed up for this event with the SME and Entrepreneurs Committee. So I think there's going to be a flavor of that driven throughout today's talk. Before we get into the session, I'm asked usually to talk about badges rather. If there are any red badges in the room, I don't think there are. These are governors and board members of AmCham. Yellow badges, such as my own, we're committee chairs and vice chairs. Blue badges are AmCham members, and grey badges are not AmCham members. And I'm always encouraged to focus on the grey badges and say, please enjoy today, let us know your thoughts, and come back again. And if you have any questions about AmCham, let us know. Okay. So without further ado, one note of housekeeping also, mobile phones, please switch to silent. There's nothing more aggravating than being a speaker and having things peeping all over the room. It's very distracting. Also, one other housekeeping note is you will notice there's a camera at the back today. One of the things we're looking at AmCham at the moment is recording sessions like this for posterity. So this is a pilot, and this is, I think, the first AmCham session to be recorded, this will be, I gather, put behind on AmCham's website for members only, and there may be other ways for utilizing this kind of material as well. So this is something we're looking at going forward. So smile for the camera. So without further ado, passing over now, or introducing Joshua Steinle. Joshua is from MWI. MWI was originally a search marketing firm based in Utah, I believe. Is that right? Yes. Set up a year and a half ago in Hong Kong, had great success. Joshua is also a writer, I think published in Forbes, South China Morning Post, and other entities. So without further ado, over to Joshua to talk about digital public relations.
Thank you, everyone. I just got back from the United States. My wife and I moved here a year ago to Hong Kong, and I just went back for my first trip back to Salt Lake City, Utah. I completely dried out there. It's a very different climate than it is here. I was using chapstick 10 times a day. I don't even know if people know what chapstick is here because you don't need it. But there, it's a valuable commodity. I was using it quite a bit. And I'm so glad to be back in Hong Kong. I've absolutely fallen in love with the city here over the past year that we've lived here. My wife and I live out on South Lantau in the little village of Mui Wo, where it's a very different environment than here in the city. We've got the water buffalo, we've got cows wandering through the streets, we've got old people playing mahjong on the street level. We love that environment out there, but I love coming here to the city and being in the hustle and bustle and the crowds and everything. And that was one of the differences I noticed between Hong Kong and going back to Utah. Going back to Utah for the first time, I went back to Salt Lake City and I went to a shopping mall there. And I just assumed everything had shut down or closed down because there was nobody around. I was walking around, and I thought, this place is a ghost town. Where is everybody? Did everything go out of business? But that's just the way it is there. There just aren't as many people here. And I started missing that, and I thought, man, I need to get back to Hong Kong where there are people and there's things going on. This is such an active, dynamic place to do business. And it's great to meet lots of new people from all over the world. It's just such a different business environment than anywhere else in the world, and we absolutely love it here. So to jump into this presentation a little bit, I'll do a little bit more intro on myself. So as Charlie said, I run a search marketing firm called MWI. We do SEO, we do this online marketing type of stuff, social. And if you've been involved or you've looked at SEO at all over the past few years, you've noticed that it's moving more and more towards being very similar to public relations. This idea that the most valuable marketing comes from the marketing you don't really pay for, but from getting published in publications or getting on TV or getting in the news somehow. That type of quote-unquote marketing is becoming more and more valuable as people tune out advertising, they tune out anything artificial, and they're looking for something more legitimate to drive their business forward. So that's why we're here talking about online PR today. And I've gotten some of this experience firsthand on the other side, being pitched from companies looking to do PR, because I do work as a journalist as well. So I run my firm during the day, and then at night I'm working on articles for Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine. I've done some writing for SCMP here locally and Hong Kong Business Magazine, various other publications. And as a writer for Forbes and these other magazines, I have people coming to me, sending me emails saying, how can I get you to write about me for Forbes? A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups, they really want to get that exposure that these publications can bring to them. They see the value in that, but they often don't know how to go about getting that publicity. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about here today is how do you contact the media the right way so that you'll actually get written up in these stories. So this is my contact information. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. I'm religiously on email. I'm always checking, josh@mwi.com. If you have any questions you want to ask, I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm not going to send you a bill afterward. You can just shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this. But we'll also have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, and we'll be able to answer questions then. But if during the middle of the presentation you just have a burning question that you really need to get out before I go on, feel free to raise your hand and shout out. They'll pass the mic back to you, and we'd be happy to take questions during the presentation. So if we want this to be a conversation and not just a lecture, so please shout out if you have something that you want to say. So let's define some terms right now, because public relations means different things to different people. I've already talked to some people here this morning who are in the PR industry, but the type of PR that they work with is a little bit different than what we're talking about here today. So there's public relations that is on the investor relations side of things. That's not what we're talking about today. There's crisis management. That's also not what we're talking about today. The type of public relations we're talking about is on the marketing side of things. It's about getting the word out about what you or what your company does. So what is online PR? It's online media placement that is not purchased as opposed to advertising. And it's typically obtained by influencing media producers. That is, you're pitching journalists, you're pitching publications, you're pitching editors, trying to get them to create a story about you or your company. So there are three primary forms of placement that we're going to talk about today. The first one is feature stories, so a story that's written about you or your company. The second one is expert mentions. So you're an expert in your field, you get quoted in an article, that's an expert mention. It might not be a whole article about you, but you get mentioned, you get some publicity out of that. And then helpful content. So there's helpful content that you can produce. Infographics is one of the ones that's in vogue right now that you see a lot in publications. We'll go into those a little bit more in depth. Or FAQs, or just different forms of written content that are helpful to people. So feature stories, to explain a little bit. This is a feature story. This is a feature story about Google, about Ray-Ban, about Oakley. So soon you'll be able to get Ray-Bans that have been made to look really dorky and geeky by Google, which seems to defy the purpose of wearing Ray-Bans, but we won't go there. But this is a feature story about Google and Ray-Ban and Oakley. This article focuses on those three companies and a product that they have. That's a feature story. As opposed to this is an expert mention. So here's an article, and in the middle of this article, they have a quote from somebody. It's from Mark Andreessen, who's a famous entrepreneur, and they reference Mark, and they say, well, this is what Mark had to say, or this is what he's doing. But the rest of the article is not about Mark. It's not about his company. It's about a certain topic. But they wanted to get Mark to say something about this topic, so he got mentioned in this article. And then finally, going on to helpful content. So here's an example of an infographic. This is a graphic that explains a concept. It talks about color and about emotions. It shows you different logos of companies and how these different companies use color to emphasize certain things. I found it particularly fascinating that Monster energy drink chose green, which is peaceful health, which seem to be two terms that have nothing to do with anything about Monster energy drink, but maybe they did that on purpose. And so this is an infographic. It tells you something about something. This is helpful content. You can use this type of content to get you, your company, your ideas into the news. And we'll tell you how. Here's another infographic. This happens to be an infographic about how infographics are terrible. So it shows how people can use fake data to create infographics that people will believe. But these type of infographics, you often see these, they're really long. You'll go to a website, you look at a page, and there's this really long graphic with charts and data that they've made look pretty, and they're trying to make it look interesting. That's an infographic. So that's the helpful content we're talking about. And when they place an infographic in an article, they'll typically give some attribution for where this infographic came from. There's usually somebody who sponsors that infographic, creates that infographic. And so if this gets placed in a publication, then down here under the infographic, they'll say, this infographic was provided by such and such company. Here's a link to their website. And that's part of the online PR that we're going to be talking about today, the value that comes from that. Okay, so why online PR? Why should you make this investment? If you're here, maybe you don't need to be convinced, and I'm preaching to the choir, but we'll talk about why you want to do this anyway. What's the value of online or digital PR? So first, it creates brand recognition. People will recognize your company. They'll have heard of your name, so that when you introduce your products and services to them, they'll say, oh yeah, I've heard of you, and there's already some trust factor there. It establishes credibility. So if you get this placement in a Bloomberg or a Wall Street Journal or some large publication, people see that and they say, well, this company wouldn't be featured in this publication if they weren't a good company. It drives traffic. If you get publicity in one of these top-tier publications that gets a lot of traffic, that traffic will flow from that publication to your website. It improves SEO efforts. So some of you might know that part of how you get ranking in the search engines is to get high-quality links from good websites pointing to your website. A link from a website like Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal or the SCMP is a very high-quality link. You get that link from that publication pointing to your website. It helps you show up higher in the search results in Google, Yahoo, etc. So getting these links from this type of PR is very good for your SEO efforts. And it's great for your ego. I mean, you see yourself featured in this publication or your company, you think, wow, I've arrived. This is awesome. Look at me, I'm awesome. So you get to put this type of badge on your website saying, oh, we've been seen in these different publications. And you see a lot of websites these days that will say, hey, we've been seen in Forbes and Mashable and TechCrunch and such. And there's a lot of credibility and value that comes from being able to put that on your website. So that's part of the value of this digital PR. Okay, so this is what you really came here to find out, which is how do I do this? How do I get those publications to show me on their websites, to write stories about me so that I can get that credibility, get all those benefits that digital PR brings? So step one, you need to have great content. That's either great infographics, great stories, great articles. You have to have a way to create this great content. We'll dive into that a little bit more in a second. And step two, you have to take that content and you have to pitch it to publishers or writers, the people who are deciding what goes in these different publications, SCMP, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, etc. So when you're pitching the media, we're going to go into some do-nots and some do's. We're going to start with the do-nots. And this is based on my own personal experience as well as experiences of other journalists. And again, for me, I started writing for Forbes not too long ago. It's been about a year and a half. But once I made that switch from being the guy doing the pitching to the person being pitched, it was very eye-opening to see how people were sending me emails, and I was reading these, and I was thinking, that's what I was sending out to journalists a couple of years ago, and this is terrible. I can't believe I was sending people these emails. And now that I'm on the other side, it's been very eye-opening, so I'm going to share some of that with you today. So this is kind of, so I'm a few steps ahead of you perhaps in this sense, in that I've had this experience of being a journalist and being on this side of things. This morning, I went out, I live in Muiwo, we have a lot of great trails out there, and I've gotten into trail running since we moved here. And most of the year, trail running in Muiwo is fantastic. It's great. I love running out there. But like I said, I went back to the US for a month. I just came back, and I went running this morning. And something had changed over the last month, which is there are these huge, scary spiders that build these enormous webs over the trails out in Muiwo. So I'm running up this trail, and I'm running through these spider webs. They're catching on my face. They're everywhere. And it's about 6 a.m. and I'm just thinking, this is terrible. I'm going to get eaten alive by these giant spiders out here. I wish there was some really tall person who had come running along about 15 minutes before me, and then I could just run right up the hill, and I wouldn't have to be running with a stick and shaking it in the air before me. So this is the case here with this online PR. I've gone through all the hard stuff over the last year and a half, 2 years, learning some of the ropes about this, and I'm going to share some of the knowledge I've gained with you. So I'm that tall guy running through the spider webs ahead of you. I've made all the mistakes doing this, and so I'll get to share what I've learned from those mistakes with you, so you don't have to make the same mistakes I've made. So do not do these things as you go out and you pitch the media about your company. So first, do not use a shotgun. Now this is a metaphorical shotgun, but also don't use a real shotgun. But what I mean is, when you have a pitch, a lot of people, what they do is they'll say, I've got a great idea for a story about my company. They put together an email. They spend a lot of time crafting this email. And then they send it out to 200 different writers all at the same time. Every writer gets the same email. And that writer can immediately tell that that's what happened, that this email was sent out to everybody. So the writer feels like, oh, this guy just sent it out to everybody. If I don't respond, he's not going to care, because he's not talking to me, he's talking to 200 people. So nobody will respond to that pitch because you sent it out to a bunch of people. When you send out a pitch to a writer, you want to target one writer at a time, not even two at a time. You want to target one writer at a time and send that pitch specifically to that writer and craft that pitch for that writer and what they're interested in. So don't use this shotgun approach. Don't tell the writer, or in this case I'm referring to myself, but if I'm the writer and you're pitching me, don't tell me that you're special, because I get that message 20 times a day. And I agree, you're special, everybody's special. I hear that 20 times a day, so when I have 20 people telling me every day, we're so special, we're so great, it just kind of fades into this noise, because that's what everybody's saying is, I've got this great company, this great invention, this great idea, this great startup. And I, as a writer, I would love to write a story about everybody who comes to me, because there are a lot of great companies and a lot of great ideas. But I just don't have the time to write 20 stories a day about all these great companies and all these great ideas. So you've got to do something different to make yourself stand out. And if you tell them, hey, I'm really great, I'm really special, it's not going to hit the spot for these writers. So if you are special, you've got to show me, and you've got a few seconds to do this. But you've got to somehow show me that what you're doing is unique, that it's new, that it's something that's never been done before, and you're going to have to do that in a convincing way. So don't tell me that I can help you. Tell me how you can help me as a writer. So if you come to me and you say, please, please, please write this article about my company. It would make such a big difference for my company, and it would help us so much. You come across as begging, and for a writer who's reading that, it's just not very attractive. They're not going to be engaged by that. They're not going to feel sorry for you. They're just going to ignore that email. And so don't tell me that you're special, or don't tell me that I can help you, but figure out how you can help me as a writer. Now, me as a writer, what am I interested in? Well, sorry, let's leave that for a little bit later. Moving on to this one. So do not ask to talk on the phone. So if somebody emails me and they're pitching me to write a story about them, and they say, hey, when can I get on the phone with you and talk to you about this for a half hour? I, as a writer, am thinking, you know, I've got limited time, and this guy is trying to get a half hour of my time so that he can pitch me and sell me a story. I don't have time to do that with 20 people a day. They're asking me to inconvenience myself. And again, it's not that I'm a jerk, it's not that I don't want to help or be helpful, but I get a lot of these requests. I simply can't respond to everybody's request. So don't say, hey, when can I get you on the phone? Don't be pushy, don't be the pushy salesman that way, but say, hey, I really would like to talk to you. Here's my brief idea in an email, and if you'd like, I'd be happy to get on the phone with you. But don't try to push them to get on the phone with you. Otherwise, they'll start backing away. They'll start feeling uncomfortable, and you'll push them away instead of getting them interested. And really, don't think about yourself so much. Really try to focus on the writer. Try to focus on the person that you're pitching. You're trying to get them to do a favor for you. You're trying to get them to do something for you. So think about what they want and make it about the writer or the publisher and what benefit you are bringing to them. So here's the things that you do want to do. So first of all, understand what the writer wants. So I'm a writer. I know you can't really see this, but this is part of the Forbes website. And these are the articles that are the most read websites on Forbes. Not today, but when I took this screenshot. So if I'm a writer for Forbes, I want my article up here. I want my article to be one of the most read articles on Forbes. What can you bring to me in terms of a story that is going to be really wildly popular and get read a lot? If you can convince me that by writing about your company or about the topic that you want me to write about, you're going to have a really popular article, or we're going to work together to get a really popular article, and it's going to get up on here, now you've got my attention. Now you're bringing me something that I'm interested in as a writer. So start thinking this way. How can I bring something to a writer or a publisher that is going to bring them attention, that is going to help them get more traffic to their website, that is going to help them become famous, that's going to help them get somewhere that they want to be? For example, I write for Forbes, I write for Entrepreneur, I write for VentureBeat, Fast Company, a bunch of these publications. I've never been able to get writing into TechCrunch or Mashable or some other publications, and I would love to get my writing in these publications. If somebody came to me and their pitch was, hey, I've got a tech startup, it's never been covered before, I know that TechCrunch likes to write articles about tech startups before anybody else gets that story, why don't we work together on an article about my company, and let's see if we can pitch this to TechCrunch. That's a pitch that's really interesting to me because I want to get my writing in TechCrunch, and we can work together, and it achieves both of our goals to get something that both of us want. Those are the type of win-win situations you want to find with editors, publishers, journalists, so that you can get your story out there. So if you're coming to me as a journalist, you should know what I've written. I've had people pitch me a week after I wrote a story with essentially the same story that I just wrote a week ago. And so when I get that pitch, I think, well, obviously they're not reading what I've written. They don't really care about me as a writer. They don't care about what I've written, because if they had looked at what I just wrote last week, they would know I just wrote about exactly what you're pitching me on last week. So before you pitch a writer, go out, look through the headlines of their articles at least. Make sure you're not pitching them on something that they obviously will not want to write about. And know my interests. Every writer has a certain focus. So for me, with Forbes, I write about Hong Kong, I write about startups and entrepreneurship, and I write about online marketing, preferably all three. That's what I'm interested in. If you come and you pitch me on something that's an established company, not a startup, and it has nothing to do with online marketing, there's nothing about that in the topic, and on top of it, your company's not actually in Hong Kong, it's in India or something, that might be a great story for somebody else, but that's just not my focus. It's not my expertise. There's no reason I would write about that because it's not my beat. It's not the thing that I focus on. So make sure before you pitch a writer that you're pitching them on a topic that they're going to be interested in, that they may have written about before, not exactly the same story before, but it's the type of thing that they've written about before. And again, offer something valuable. I gave this TechCrunch example. If you can go to a journalist and say, hey, I've looked at the work that you've done. I can see that this is the type of thing that you'd be interested in, that you want to get in these publications. I've got an idea to get you in there. You've got something valuable for them. The point is to start thinking about what you can bring to the journalist, the publisher, the magazine, rather than what they can do for you. So going back to creating content, In order to get placed, you have to have interesting content. You have to tell interesting stories. People are really bored by data and graphs most of the time, unless there's a story that goes along with that graph, unless it impacts them somehow and it's quickly understandable. Stories are the best way to communicate information in a way that's engaging, that keeps people interested. So if you think back to the stories you read when you were a little kid, the children's books that you read in school or that your parents read to you when you were a little kid, those are great stories. That's why those stories are popular. That's why you might still remember those stories today and tell those stories to your children. Those are great stories. Make your story that simple, that interesting, that engaging. Try to write a children's book about whatever story it is about your company. If you can make it interesting to a kid, it'll be interesting to everybody else too, adults included. But I'm not interesting. That's what everybody says. I talk to crowds about this, and this is the overwhelming response I get is they'll say, well, that's great. I need to create an interesting story, but my business just isn't that interesting. It's just numbers. It is just data. There's nothing that interesting going on. Why would anybody care about my story? Why would anybody care about my business? It's just not that interesting to anybody else. And that's complete nonsense. Everybody has fascinating stories. Every company has fascinating stories. You just need to know how to look for those stories and how to craft that story. You, as a person, are fascinating. You have very interesting experiences, and you are an expert. Everybody in this room is an expert on something. What does it take to be an expert? All you need to be an expert is to know a little bit more about something than the guy that you're talking to, and you're an expert. If you talk to somebody, the next time you're sitting with somebody and you're talking with them and you're thinking, man, this guy or this gal is really smart, they really know a lot, they're an expert, think about that experience a week later after you've learned a little bit more about that topic, and you'll realize they just knew a little bit more about that than I did, perhaps. I'll give you a perfect example. So there's a topic in the United States right now called net neutrality. This is the idea that all internet traffic should be equal and should be managed equally, and the telecoms like a PCCW shouldn't be able to give preference to a certain kind of traffic over another kind of traffic. For example, PCCW shouldn't be able to give faster traffic for Netflix than for some startup's website. So this is kind of a hot topic issue in the US right now, and I wrote a Forbes article about this. I actually didn't know that much about it, but I had some opinions and I threw it out there. And it got a lot of attention, and I was asked to be on a TV show as a result of it, which was my first time ever being on TV, and that scared me to death. But it was fun. And then I got called to be on a radio program as well, and I was on this radio program, and toward the end of this radio program, is an hour long, and the last 10 minutes, suddenly the host says, okay, now let's stop talking about net neutrality, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin for the last 10 minutes. Well, they didn't tell me that I was going to talk about Bitcoin, and I'm not an expert on Bitcoin. And I was sitting there thinking, great, thanks for prepping me for this. All of a sudden, I'm supposed to talk for 10 minutes about Bitcoin. And the only thing that saved me was that about 12 hours earlier, I had sat down, actually right in the cafe downstairs, right there. 12 hours earlier, before this radio program, I had sat down with a Bitcoin expert, and we had talked for about an hour and a half. So I just regurgitated everything he had told me 12 hours before, and I came out of this experience looking great, because I had all this information fresh in my head, and I said, oh yeah, Bitcoin this and this and this and this, and it all went off great, and the host said thank you, and we ended the show, and I thought, whew, okay, now I'm a Bitcoin expert. So being an expert doesn't mean that you're really an expert per se. It means you can talk about it on a level that's maybe more than the audience that you're talking to. Everybody here is an expert. Everybody knows more about something than somebody else, especially about the business that you're in, the work that you do. You know more about that than anybody else, and you can come off across as an expert very easily if you know how to do some writing. So here's how you go about creating these stories. So you say, great, Josh, you've convinced me. I'm an expert at what I do. But how do I turn that into a story? How do I make that into something interesting that somebody is actually going to publish? So here are 5 ways to create interesting stories about what you do. So here is route number one to creating an interesting story. So you remember this as the PAS method. So it's, you've got a problem, you agitate the problem, and then you provide the solution. This is pretty standard fare. So you find a problem in your industry or in the world that your company solves somehow. Then you blow that problem up into something even bigger than it really is. You agitate that problem and say, look at how big this problem is and how bad this is. Oh, and here is the solution. And maybe it's your company that provides the solution. Maybe you're just the knowledge expert. You know what the solution is. But there, you've got a story that's interesting to people who think that that is a problem or are experiencing that problem. Number two, the tie-in. So maybe there's something going on in the news right now that everybody is talking about. It's something that's getting shared all over social media. For example, here in Hong Kong right now, you've got this Occupy Central thing that's in the news quite a bit. It's front page news every day, it seems like. Now, what does Occupy Central have to do with your business? I don't know, but you might be able to find a tie-in there somehow. There might be some way that the people in Occupy Central are using social media, and that applies to the way that your business can use social media. Or it might be something about the way that Occupy Central is confronting lawmakers, or the way that they're getting their story out, and you might be able to say, hey, that's kind of similar to what our business does or could do, and so you tie in your story to this more newsworthy story, and by attaching your story to that story, it's more likely to get picked up, it's more likely to be interesting to people. You tell secrets. What are the things that you know about your industry that nobody will say, that nobody will put out there? In my industry, it's pricing information. If anybody's ever shopped for SEO services, you know it's frustrating because you go to an SEO firm and you say, what does this cost? And they say, well, it depends. We need to sit down with you. We need to have a meeting. We need to get you a proposal. And basically, we need to spend enough time with you that you're already committed to us, and then we'll tell you the price in which you're not going to like, but at that point you're already invested, you're behind schedule, and you just have to go with us. That's what a lot of firms do, right? So what can you do if that's the situation in your firm, something like that? You throw out that information and you give it out, and now you're different than everybody else. You're giving people something that's valuable, that's a secret, that people say, wow, this company's different. They just say things that nobody else will say. So by telling those industry secrets, you can get more attention, you can get news, you can get out there. Top 10 lists. Come up with a list of anything. Doesn't have to be 10, could be 5, can be 3. 2 doesn't work for some reason, 4 doesn't work for some reason. For some reason it has to be odd numbers, or 10's okay, but 3, 5, 7, 10. For some reason those numbers work and everything in between doesn't. But you come up with the top 10 list and you say, here are top 10 things about our industry that nobody knows. Or here are 10 things about our product. Or here are 10 things about whatever topic it is that somehow relates back to your company. You come up with a list of things and there you go. You've got a story. And finally, just go interview somebody. Go to the CEO of your company and say, let's do an interview. This is going to be an interview about what it's been like to be the CEO of the company and some of the challenges you've faced and how you've overcome them. And we're going to turn this into an article. Is that going to be interesting to people? Sure, that's going to be interesting to people, because there are a lot of other CEOs out there who might be facing the same problems as your CEO. Or there might be some marketing challenge you faced, and you could write you could interview the VP of marketing about how they overcame that challenge. You could probably go to everybody in your company and get 5 interviews out of every single person in your company, and every one of those interviews could be a story, and you've got 60 or 100 stories sitting right there just by interviewing different people in your company. Again, this goes back to everybody is an expert. Everybody has something interesting to say that other people don't know. So interviews are a great way to get that content out of people. And then it'll be unique content that nobody else has. So that's 5 ways to create stories from the content that you have available to you. So once you have a story, you've got your story, and now you need to go pitch it. First you want to think about channels, that is publications or the medium, the magazine, the TV show, that channel that you're going to pitch, and then you want to think about people. So channels are their websites, their blogs, social media accounts, like famous social media people, that can be its own channel. There are media sharing websites like YouTube. Think about the channel that's going to work best for your story and how you're going to get your story into that channel, or what would work best for you. and then you focus on the people. So you choose that channel, and then when it comes to those people, you want to create profiles for these writers. So you go online, you find your channel, maybe it's Bloomberg, and you start saying, great, who are the writers at Bloomberg? You make a list of those writers, you eliminate the ones that you know are not going to be interested in what you're promoting, and those that seem to be the people that you think you could target, you start creating a profile. You say, what are they interested in? What do they write about? How do they gather information for a story? You know the easiest way to do this? Email them and just say, hey, I'm really new at this PR type stuff. I'm responsible for this for my company. I'm just trying to get information about how you choose stories. And you say, hey, can I buy you coffee sometime, take you out? You'd be surprised how you can get to high profile people by asking for help that way. Again, pitch one story at a time to one person at a time. Don't do the shotgun approach. And every time you have an interaction with somebody, make a goal to learn something from that interaction that you're going to use to improve your pitch the next time. Because I guarantee the first 10 times you do it, you'll be learning a lot about how to improve your pitch the next time. Another reason to not do the shotgun approach, because if you do the shotgun approach, it's all gone and you don't have another chance with those people. So here are some case studies. Let's make this real. Let's show exactly how this has worked out for some companies. These are case studies that I've had personal experience with. So in the UK, there's an SEO firm. This is actually a competitor of mine, but we'll promote them anyway. And they're called SEO Gadget. They're an SEO firm in the UK. And they saw that I write about online marketing for Forbes. So they contacted me with an infographic, and the infographic was about online marketing. So they knew what I was interested in, online marketing, and they have a client in Hong Kong, and they know I'm interested in Hong Kong. So they contacted me and said, hey, we've got this infographic about online marketing that we would love to get into a Forbes article. Maybe you could write an article about this certain topic, and then you can use our infographic. And we'll give you an exclusive on it so that nobody else will have this infographic before you do. You'll be the first one to get this infographic as a writer, and that will help your story to be more popular because people will like that infographic, and then they'll share your article. That was a compelling pitch for me. I get to write about online marketing. I get to write about Hong Kong. They're giving me an infographic, which makes my article more popular. So I wrote the article. They got the infographic in it. So SEO Gadget's happy because they placed an infographic. Their client is happy because SEO Gadget got an infographic placed on behalf of their client. I'm happy because I got an article. Forbes is happy because they got an article that got read more. Everybody wins in that case. Study 2, HW Trek. This is the advice route. This guy emailed me. He said, I'm new at this company. I don't know what I'm doing with marketing. Can I get some advice on how to get the news out about what we're doing at our company? It's really interesting. I have no idea how to pitch the media, though. So I'm much more likely to respond to that pitch as opposed to, I've got a great story. Please write a story about me. He didn't ask me to write a story about him. He just said, I need advice on how to go about doing this. So we went and we sat down. We had coffee. We talked for about an hour. And as a result, when he started telling me about the business, I thought, well, this is a fascinating business. I'd love to write a story about this. And I did. I wrote a story about it. He never asked me to write that story. He never pitched me on writing the story. He just asked me for advice on how do I contact journalists, and it happened to turn into a story. So try that route with a journalist sometime. It'll be more successful than actually pitching them on a story, I bet. So case study number 3, timing. This is, sometimes you do get lucky. So MySugar is a company that has an app that's on the iPhone and Android, and it's for diabetics. I don't write about diabetics, except this one time I was. I was working on a story about other inventions for diabetics. It just happened to come together that I knew a few companies, and I thought, well, hey, I can put together a story here. And while I was in the middle of writing that story, this app company contacted me and said, hey, we've got this interesting app. They're not from Hong Kong. They're out of Europe somewhere. But I thought, hey, I've already got a story that I'm writing about diabetics or products for diabetics. These guys have another product. I can stick it in there. It was just perfect timing. They were able to get in. That's lucky, but sometimes it works. Hong Kong Visa Giza. If you've had to get a visa here for Hong Kong, you may have come across this guy's website. It's orange. He has a bunch of videos. His name's Stephen Barnes. He was our visa consultant. So when we came to Hong Kong, we happened to find him. We used him to get our business investment visa to come here to Hong Kong. And I wrote a story in Forbes about how I got here to Hong Kong, how I got my business started, how I set everything up, and I included him in that story. As a result of this, he's gotten a ton of business to his website, to his consultancy, and it's been very successful for him. So providing services to journalists can be another way that you can get PR. Now, that's a little bit tricky because if you go to a journalist and you say, hey, I want to give you something, you're already getting into this kind of a shady area. But if you go and you associate with journalists and you just kind of let them know what you do and you happen to be there and they happen to hire you, who knows? You might get into a situation where you're getting some PR out of that. And actually, that's happened several times with me. And the next case study is the same thing. HK Commons, when I came over here to set up my business, I had to incorporate, I had to get it set up, I had to hire somebody to do auditing services. I reached out to a contact I had and he said, oh, you should go talk to HK Commons. Zhang over there, he'll take care of you. And so I contracted with Zhang and he got my business all set up. And so again, when I was writing that story about how I arrived here in Hong Kong and how I set everything up, I mentioned HK Commons. A few weeks ago, I reached out to Zhang and I said, so do you get anything out of that article? Like, does that give you any business? And he said, oh yeah, we've been super swamped. We've probably gotten 30 people in the last month as a result of that article. In fact, that's why we are so busy that we're so slow to respond to all of your emails because we're responding to all this traffic that is coming through this article that you wrote. So again, associating with journalists, being in a spot where you might be able to provide them services can work out pretty well. So here's the easiest way I know of to get press. If you've ever heard of this website before, helpareporter.com, this is a gold mine for getting free press for your business. This is just, it's so easy, it's great. I almost hesitate to share it because I don't want everybody to use it, but at the same time, it's so great. So HARO, or Help a Reporter Out, what this website does is it connects journalists who need expert sources for their stories with those expert sources. So you go to this website, you sign up as an expert source, and then 3 times a day you'll get an email, and in this email it's going to list requests from journalists. And these requests are going to say things like, I'm writing a story on such and such topic and I need somebody who's an expert on this topic to give me a quote. Please contact me ASAP. And there will be 40, 50, 60 of those requests in each of these 3 emails. And these emails come out every single day. So you get this email, you scan through it. Most of the time you're going to look at these requests and you'll say, well, nobody's looking for what I do. But maybe once a week, maybe every other week, you'll see a request and you'll say, aha, I'm the expert this guy is looking for. I'm the guy he wants to talk to. You contact him, you give him a quote, and all of a sudden you're in the Wall Street Journal, or you're in Bloomberg, or you're in some top-tier publication. I've used this to get placement for my own company. I've used this to get placement for clients. It's a super easy, free way that you can get publicity in some of these top-tier publications. Now, the other thing you could do, you could go out and you could hire a PR firm and you can pay them $80,000 a month, and they'll go out and they'll read HARO on your behalf, and then they'll get you these placements the same way. Or you could just do it yourself. Now, PR firms do a lot more work than that, but some of them don't. But a good PR firm will do quite a bit more work than that, and they'll use their network and they'll use their relationships to get you placement. But there's a lot that you can do on your own. There's a lot that you can do for free. Real quickly, keys to success with HARO is you have to respond quickly. When you respond to that expert request, there are often 100 other people who are responding at the same time. If you respond first, you're more likely to get a response from that journalist, because by the time you're the 80th or 90th person responding, it's just buried under a bunch of email. I've used this from the journalist side too, so I know what happens. When I put out a request for an expert source, I get a ton of response from it, and I just can't respond to everybody. The first people who get me good responses, those are the people who tend to make it into the articles. When you're responding to one of these HARO requests, in the subject line of your email, put in HARO, and then the topic of the story that you're responding to. If you just put some generic thing in your email subject line, they won't notice it, it'll get buried, they won't see it. You want to make it really easy for them to pick out that, oh, this email is in response to this request I made. You want to give the journalist exactly what they want and nothing extra. Sometimes I'll request 1 to 2 sentences as a quote, and then I get half a page. Well, that takes a lot of my time to edit that out, figure out which 1 to 2 sentences I can use. So I usually look at that and I just say, this might be great, but I just don't have time to go through this, and I don't use that. So if a journalist says, this is what I want, give them exactly what they want, nothing more. And then try to give people what they want in the first sentence. Sometimes people say, well, here's why you should use my quote. If your quote's good, I'll use it. You don't need to tell me why I'm going to use your quote. Just give me a good quote, and if I read it and it's good, I'll plug it in. But if you're trying to convince me that you're an expert and that you're great and that your company's great, it just takes too much time, and again, that email's going to get deleted. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. We're going to open it up for Q&A and go. Well, let's see. Let's,
if you can
Charlie's
just give your name and organization before you ask a question.
Okay. Hi, my name is Quintana, and I'm with Click Lifestyle. And my question is more on format. So this was kind of the first time you opened my eyes about actually going to a journalist. In the past, I've been thinking about approaching a magazine or a publication as opposed to a person. Mm-hmm. So how do you want the format to be if you were to get a story? Is it just a basic, do you want a PR kit? Would you want or just here's my story in a paragraph form, bullet point? What kind of formatting do you think is a good way to approach?
I'll tell you first what I don't want. When people pitch me, every once in a while, I'll get a fully written story from somebody, and I don't want that because I want to write my own story. I don't want to publish somebody else's story. But I want almost that. So what I really like is all the details, a couple of good quotes, some data points, maybe a bulleted list in there, but just kind of roughly formatted. So you say, here's our story, and here's some quotes, here's some data points. I can take that and then I can write all the surrounding story about that and make it my voice, the way that I want to write that story. And that really makes my job easy. And if you make my job easy, you're more likely to get published. So if I have to go out and I have to sit down with a company, interview them, email them to get feedback multiple times, it's going to take me 5 or 6 hours, maybe more, to write a story. If I can get the right information the first time, it might cut that down to 40 minutes or an hour that I spend on that story. It's just more likely that I'm going to write that story than if it's a 7-hour long story, because I just want to get around to the 7-hour long story. So, and if you go and you start looking at articles and you say, this is the type of article I want written about my company, you'll be able to pick out the things that that company provided to that journalist. You'll say, okay, they've got 3 quotes from the CEO, and they've got these data points, and you just copy that format and you say, okay, I'm going to provide the same information about my company to this different journalist, and then they'll have the raw materials they need to go out and craft a story about my company that's similar to this article that I want written about my company. Does that make sense?
No, it does, definitely. So you don't need like a professional PR kit in a way. I just feel like we spend a lot of time making these kits, and then people want, it's all about formatting, and then it gets so complicated. Or is it just, it sounds like it's more approachable just to send an email out that's...
Email is great, because if you just send me an email, it's great. I can copy and paste it. I can start working on it. It's all about fast and how easy it is. If it looks great, I don't really care. It's more about, is there a good story here? Is there a good core story? And is this good information? Are there good quotes in there that are interesting to people? If it's got that, I don't care what it looks like. I don't care the format it comes in. But I would recommend just putting it in the email, not even putting it in a Word doc or something, because then you get the one journalist who doesn't use Word or something, or doesn't like to open attachments, or the attachment gets screened out in the spam inbox or something. If you just copy and paste it into the email and it's casual, that's totally fine.
Thank you.
Hi, Diana David from Financial Times, on the commercial side. A lot of what you said is pretty similar to traditional public relations in print or whatnot. One of the things as we pitch our board directors program is that I'm finding is that it's easy to get a story, but then now I'm starting to pitch influencers on Twitter or LinkedIn, and those are not necessarily to write full-fledged stories. Sometimes it's just to notice us or to, do a comment. We get more leads off of, a retweet that says that is one sentence that leads to a sign-up page. So how do you pitch those things?
Great. So this is a secret that melds online PR with social media. So there are these influencers out there. There are these people who are on Twitter and they have tens of thousands of followers. And how can you use those people to help your story get out there more? So what I'll do as a journalist sometimes, again, this goes back to I want a lot of people to read my story. So I recently wrote an article on advice from successful entrepreneurs on what less successful or earlier entrepreneurs can do once their company reaches $1 million to keep growing their company. So that was the specific focus of my article. Now, why did I go out and get advice from a bunch of other entrepreneurs? Part of it was I was really interested in what these other entrepreneurs had to say. I wanted that advice. I thought this would make a good article. But I also chose high-profile entrepreneurs that have a lot of Twitter followers because I knew if I include this guy in my article, he's probably going to share this on his Twitter profile. And so if you want to create a story that's going to get shared a lot in social media, a great way to go is to get a quote for your article from some expert who's very popular on social media. So he might not work for your company, he might not really have anything to do with your business, but he might have some opinion on it, he might be willing to give a quote. So you go to this expert, you get a quote from him, and then when the article comes out, you say, hey, we got you quoted in this article here, and chances are he's going to share that. He's going to love to share that article out on his Twitter feed or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. And the more of those people you can get in an article, the better. So that's why I went out and I got 10 different entrepreneurs who are all popular on social media to contribute to this article because I knew they would all blast it out. Does that answer your question? Sure does. And that's easy because everybody likes to be quoted. So you go to these famous people who are out there already promoting themselves. If they've got tens of thousands of followers on Twitter, you already know these people like to be in the limelight. They like to be promoted. And so you can approach these people and say, hey, I want to get a quote from you. We're working on an article about our company. We're trying to get this into Bloomberg. Why would that guy not take 5 seconds to give you a quote? And then you go to Bloomberg and you say, hey, we've got a quote from this famous guy in this article. Of course you want to run this article. It's got this famous guy in it. So you're playing it from both sides and everybody wins. All right.
Any other questions?
Quick question. I'm Pablo from Attendees. Is HARO a global resource, or it works in every country?
HARO does work in every country. It is kind of US-centric. That is, just most of the journalists, most of the people on there are in the US, but you can use it anywhere in the world and it will show up and you will get a response. So if I look for sources in Hong Kong, I'll get them. I just won't get as large of a response as I would get if I were targeting a US audience. Yep.
I'm Debbie Mattson. I feel a little cynical about your comments around going for advice to a journalist rather than pitching them. Because it seems to me like saying go have an informational interview with someone because you're not really looking for a job. I mean, they're asking you for the same thing, and it seems like it's almost the same. What's the nuance that makes it so much better for you?
So you're saying it sounds manipulative?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. Yeah. And the difference really is it's sincerity. If the person's sincerely looking for advice, that's going to come through. If they're trying to manipulate me, that's going to come through. And I think most people aren't comfortable trying to purposely manipulate somebody else. So I think that just rarely happens, and nobody here would probably want to do that. But to sincerely ask for advice, that's fine. And that came through loud and clear when I met with this gentleman and we talked. Again, he never asked me to write anything. He never hinted at it. I never got any sense from him that he was trying to get me to write an article. He really seemed to genuinely want to understand the industry and how it worked and how to get a story. And then I volunteered to write an article about him. So yeah, what I would do is I would say, be sincere about that and say, hey, I want to go out, I want to get some advice from somebody, and everybody in this room, you wouldn't be here if you didn't want that kind of information, if you didn't want that kind of advice, and approach it that way and just in your mind say, I'm out here to get advice, and if they happen to want to write an article, great, that's the icing on top, but really I am just trying to get advice. Be sincere about it, and everything will go well, and maybe you'll get an article, maybe you won't, but if you don't get an article, you'll still get some great advice and you'll have a contact. Okay. You can always pitch the person later too.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Charlotte from Healthy Selfie. So if you get an email from someone and you're just not interested at all, will you reply to the email, or how long do you think people should take before following up without pestering someone?
That's a great question. If I can tell that it's a shotgun email that's been sent to a lot of people, I won't respond to that for sure. If I can tell that the email is crafted directly to me and only for me, then I will respond. And now I might not respond immediately, but I do intend to respond even if it takes me a while. So I would say wait at least a week, 6 to 7 days to follow up. And then if you follow up and just say, hey, I want to make sure you got my previous email, that's harmless, that's normal. No journalist is going to take offense at that unless they're crazy, and in which case you don't want them writing about you anyway. So that's perfectly reasonable. If you follow up after a week and you get no response, I would probably just drop it there. If you follow up one more time, that might be harmless. They might feel like you're pushing them or something. Again, most reasonable journalists would just, if they're going to ignore it, they'll just keep ignoring it. But they might just say, oh, I've just been super busy. Sorry, I haven't been able to respond. And then they'll get a response out to you. But and there are people who contact me and I'm interested in writing a story about them, and I still don't respond in a timely manner because I'm traveling or I'm just busy. I have a blog post about this on my blog, which is, journalists don't hate you, they're just really busy. Journalists are rushing around, they're trying to get 50 stories out, and they get all these emails in, and they might read through them and say, wow, this is a great story, I got to get back to this. They mark it for follow-up, and 2 weeks later, they've just forgotten about it. They're just busy. So the follow-up definitely helps sometimes. Sometimes they want you to follow up because they really do want to write that story. They just haven't been able to get back to you. All right.
Hi, Susan.
Here and then here.
Oh, okay, sorry. Susan Madden, University of Southern California, Hong Kong, and South China. Question about dealing with Asia-specific media. You're speaking more about international publications and definitely English-speaking publications. Have you noted anything different in working with Asian publications?
You know, to be honest, I haven't been here long enough to feel like I can give a qualified answer, a good answer to that. If I gave an answer, I'd just kind of be coming up with something. Not that I can't do that, but I don't want to do that. So I don't know. I've worked with SCMP, and the people, my contacts over there are locals, and so, but the impression I get there is that they work the same way as any other publication, or they have the same interests as any other publication. But again, I just don't have enough experience to really answer your question well, I would say. Sorry. Okay, over here, you've been very patient, so.
That's atypical for me, actually. My name is Bob Bunger. I'm with Waypoint Asia. And I like your advice to take a one-to-one approach. And your example was if we can help you get on TechCrunch, which we might be able to do that, by the way, is if you hadn't told us that, how would we know that? So if we want to take a one-to-one approach for a lot of different journalists, I'm looking online here under Joshua Steimel, and there's no way for me to really guess that. Here's how I can help you. Yeah.
So one easy way to tell is there are journalists who are staff writers and there are journalists who are contributors. I'm a contributing journalist, which means I write articles for a lot of different publications and I contribute those articles. Sometimes I get paid. Most of the time I actually don't get paid. It's just a platform for me to be able to get out what I'm trying to get out. A staff writer is going to write for a single publication, so that's not going to be a pitch that you can use for a staff writer. And you can look up their profile on a website and usually it will say, this person is a staff writer. On Forbes, they list people out as contributors or staff writers, and this is the same format on a lot of other publications. So that pitch will only work on contributors, and if you can look at that contributor Oftentimes you'll find that they have a personal blog, and if you see, well, gee, this person's written for 8 or 9 different publications, you can just identify which publications they haven't written for and say, hey, maybe you'd be interested in writing for this other high-profile publication. I have an idea about how we can get into that publication. And for those people who write for a lot of publications, that's probably going to be attractive to them because they're trying to grow their network. So that's the way I would do that. It won't work every time, but in a lot of cases, you can figure it out that way. Over here.
Hi, I'm Beatrice Remy from Luminous. How do you see the rise of visuals, photos, videos, and how is it important when we pitch?
Any visuals you have are going to be helpful, regardless of what it is. So if you have photos, that's great. Video is even better. Infographics are really good. When you can pitch a visual, for one, it just makes it easier for the journalist who might have to find the visual on their own. When I write for Forbes, if there's a photo at the top of my article, I had to go out and find that myself. Forbes doesn't do that work for me. When I write for Entrepreneur, they choose the photos themselves. They won't let me give them a photo. They want to choose the image themselves. But if you can provide a photo that's useful for that article, you're probably making the journalist's job easier, which makes them more likely to write about you. If you have video, that goes beyond just providing that photo that looks nice at the top. Now you're providing additional content that makes that post more valuable, more shareable, more likely to get read. So you're adding value to that article in a large way. Infographics are great because they'll get seen more than video. So somebody is less likely to click on a video and view it than they are to look at an infographic. So my favorite thing is if you can put together an infographic for somebody, and again, it doesn't have to be super nice. If it's professionally designed, and there's a company out there called Visually, it's visual.le or something. There's a company out there called Visual, and you can go there, you can hire infographic designers, and they'll do a very good job, but you're going to pay 24 to 50,000 Hong Kong to get your infographic designed there. So it's not cheap. But you can get an infographic designed there that's very nice, and then you can use that in your pitch. You've got a high rate of success, or a high likelihood of success, that is going to get you a placement if you go that route. But again, you can come up with an infographic on your own, and as long as it's not really poorly designed, as long as it's decent and it has valuable information, it's going to get placed. For example, a friend of mine he used to work for a supplement company, a health supplement company. They make these little capsules that you take every day, and supposedly you get healthier with these. And their target market are people who are into yoga classes, who are into natural health, or into alternative medicine. So they created an infographic, and down the left it says, when your body craves XYZ foods, like chocolate, what your body really wants is this certain mineral, and you can also get this mineral from almonds. So eat almonds instead of chocolate to satisfy that craving. And it had a few junk foods listed, and then the healthier alternatives listed in the mineral. It was just a graph. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't even well designed at all. But that got 1 million shares on Facebook or something. It was wildly successful for driving traffic to this company and getting people signed up on their Facebook page and getting exposure in the media. So you can create infographics that aren't really nice looking, but as long as they have valuable information, they can be very effective to get press.
Hi, I'm Mandy from Morton's The Steakhouse. I want to ask, is any major difference in the way to pitch journalists for printer magazine and to pitch bloggers for social media?
So is there a difference between pitching journalists, professional journalists, and social media people? Is that the question? Did I understand correctly?
Yes.
Okay. They do have different goals in a sense, but they're also the same. Journalists want exposure. They want people to read their articles. They want to get the word out about whatever they write. They want to be popular. And social media people even more so. If somebody who has a popular social media account is by nature a self-promoter, they're trying to make themselves famous. They're trying to get traffic to their social media profile. So in that sense, they're the same. The real difference is that the journalist operates under the guise of being dignified, whereas the social media guy is just an ego-driven hack, right? So the journalist just looks at himself and thinks, I am a more dignified person than the social media guy over here who's just trying to get attention. So the trick in both cases, though, is to play to what they want again, to figure out what they want and figure out how you can provide what they want. For the social media person, you especially want to focus on giving them content that is shareable, something that they can post on their account that as soon as people see it, they say, wow, I've got to share this with all my friends. The journalist wants the same thing, but he's probably not thinking about it quite as much as the social media guy is. So it's kind of when you approach a journalist, you say, this is an article that's going to get read a lot, that's going to be really popular, that'll get shared a lot. Those are the words the journalist might want to hear, whereas the social media guy, all he wants to hear is this is going to get shared a lot. That's all he cares about is share, 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 and that it's going to bring traffic back to his profile. Did that answer your question?
Joshua, I might pitch in with a question here. So
Sure.
As a former journalist and PR guy myself, I would say a lot of what you've been speaking about is recognizing the traditional PR.
Mm-hmm.
But just focusing in on the digital bit, and specifically around headline writing. Now, I guess one of the things that's driven you guys at MWI towards what I would think of as traditional PR is because Google is playing with its algorithms. And it's becoming more and more difficult to get stuff on search engines. And headlines, of course, are a great way of getting stuff indexed and recognized and higher up the rankings. So is there a trick to headline writing for search engines? And what are the do's and don'ts?
Sure. Before I say any do's and don'ts, the website you want to go to really dive into this and learn more about it is copyblogger.com. Copyblogger.com is the #1 website for people who write and who want to get what they're writing noticed in the media. And there are probably 20 articles there just on headlines alone and how to write the headlines. That said, what works well? You want to deliver to people what they're interested in the headline. You want to tell people, this is what the article's about, and this is the value you're going to get from this article. If you tiptoe around that, then they won't understand what the article's about. If you get the headline wrong, they'll read the headline, then they look at the article and they say, well, this isn't what the headline led me to believe I was going to get out of this article. They'll be disappointed, they'll leave. I almost hesitate to say this because it's becoming a little bit cliche, but the two things that generate a lot of reads are headlines that start with how to ... or the top 10 ... At Forbes, they've specifically asked us to steer away from starting headlines with that because everybody's doing it. And Forbes is kind of getting a bad rap sometimes because they're getting known as, oh, if I go to Forbes, every single article is going to be the top 10 this, the top 7 this, the top 5 this, 5 ways to do this, 7 ways to do this. But why does everybody do that? Because it works. And the same with how to do this, how to do that. People love those articles because they read the headline and they say, well, this is going to show me how to do this. And then you have the article and it tells you how to do that. It delivers on what it promises. So those are very effective headlines, but they can get swallowed up in the sea of all the other headlines that are structured the same way. So you want to start out thinking that way, or this is what I do, is I think, okay, I've got a great how-to article. How can I structure a headline that doesn't start with the words how-to, but still tells people that it's a how-to article and gets the point across? Or how can I create a list of 7 top such and such things, but I don't actually say that, but I am saying it without actually using those words? So I try to get creative about writing the headlines, but it's that concept of delivering in the article what you're promising and making it obvious in the headline as to what you're going to deliver. That's really the key to effective headline writing.
And how about use of keywords?
Yeah, so for SEO purposes, now, if you write an article that's popular, that gets shared a lot, that might be great. And you'll get a spike in traffic, and that will be great for your website. However, the traffic that you get from a particular article to your website over time, over the next year, over the next 2-3 years, might be greater in the long run, than it is in that initial spike when the article is published. So this is where a lot of the SEO side of things, the digital side of things comes in with creating an article. When I write an article, I think, okay, is this newsworthy? Is this going to generate some buzz? Is this a popular topic? But I'm also thinking, 2 years down the road, is this article still going to be relevant? Because if I can make that article relevant 2, 3 years down the road and make it kind of timeless, I'm going to get a lot of traffic over time, and I might get more traffic, more benefit from it in the long run than in that short run. And that's where the keywords come in. So you start thinking, what are people searching for? What keywords would somebody type into Google if they want to learn about this topic? And if you can include those topics in your headline and throughout your post, don't overdo it, but put it in there a few times, then chances are that article is going to rank better for that keyword topic. And over time, you might see a lot more benefit from that than you even get in the initial, that window when it's published.
Okay. Any other questions for Joshua? None?
All right. You've got my email address. If anybody wants to email me, I'm always happy to answer questions. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the questions.
So before you go, Joshua, a quick token of our thanks from AmCham for a very interesting and thoughtful presentation. Please come back sometime. Before you all go, there are a number of Communications Marketing Committee sessions coming up in the works. Keep an eye out. We hope to see you back here very shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.